I moved into my home expecting peace and quiet, but what I got instead was a never-ending battle with my neighbor, Karen. At first, it was little things: her loud phone conversations on the front porch, the way she let her trash cans overflow, or how she constantly parked half an inch into my driveway. Annoying, but nothing worth starting a war over. But then, there was the dog poop. It started subtly. Every morning when I walked out to get the paper, I noticed a fresh pile of dog poop right in the middle of my lawn. At first, I thought maybe it was just some random dog from the neighborhood. But after a week of this happening every single day, I started watching more closely. And sure enough, I caught Karen's fluffy white poodle squatting in my yard while Karen stood there, completely ignoring it. I gave her the benefit of the doubt at first. Maybe she hadn't noticed. So the next morning, when I saw her out there again, I casually mentioned it. "Hey, Karen, I think your dog might have left something on my lawn." She gave me a fake surprised look, then waved me off. "Oh, it's just a little bit of nature. It'll break down." Then she walked away without cleaning it up. That was when I knew this wasn't an accident. Karen wasn't just negligent, she was entitled. The next day, I put up a polite sign: "Please clean up after your dog." It was gone by the time I got home from work. The day after that, I caught her dog in the act again, so I grabbed a plastic bag, scooped up the mess, and knocked on her door. "Hey, looks like your pup forgot something," I said cheerfully, handing her the bag. She looked disgusted, took it reluctantly, and slammed the door. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Not only did Karen not stop letting her dog use my lawn as a personal bathroom, but now she was doing it on purpose. I saw her smirk as she let her dog wander onto my grass, standing there with her arms crossed, daring me to do something about it. It was clear that she wasn't going to change. She thought she could walk all over me, and my lawn, without consequences. That was when I realized it was time to stop playing nice. If Karen wanted to treat my yard like her personal dog park, I was going to make sure she regretted it. And I had the perfect plan. Karen had made it clear she wasn't just negligent, she was deliberately disrespecting my property. Every day, she walked her little white poodle right onto my lawn, letting it do its business in plain sight while she scrolled through her phone like she owned the place. And when I tried confronting her, she just brushed me off like I was the unreasonable one. That's when I knew that being polite wouldn't cut it anymore. I needed to get creative. I spent the next few days researching my options. Could I file a complaint with the HOA? Maybe. But after reading through their rules, I realized they were useless unless I could prove it was happening repeatedly. Calling animal control? That wouldn't stop her, it would just make her dig her heels in deeper. I needed something instantaneous, undeniable, and humiliating. Then, inspiration struck. While scrolling through home improvement forums, I came across motion-activated sprinklers. Originally designed to keep deer and raccoons out of gardens, these devices were perfect for my situation. The second they detected movement, they would blast water in a high-pressure spray, enough to startle, but not enough to harm. They even had adjustable sensitivity settings, meaning I could fine-tune them to ensure they only went off when a certain-sized creature walked onto my lawn. I was thrilled. This was exactly what I needed. But I wasn't just going to install them. I was going to set the perfect trap, one that would guarantee maximum embarrassment for Karen. I ordered 2 high-powered motion-activated sprinklers online, set to arrive in 2 days. In the meantime, I carefully mapped out the exact spots Karen liked to let her dog poop. I took note of her walking schedule. Like clockwork, she came by every morning at 7:15 a.m. and again in the evening around 6 p.m. She barely paid attention to her dog, assuming nobody could do anything about it. But in exactly 48 hours, she was about to get the shock of her life. I spent the next evening installing the sprinklers, placing them strategically along the edges of my lawn, exactly where Karen and her poodle always entered. I tested them multiple times, adjusting the sensitivity so they wouldn't activate for random birds or passing cars. When I was satisfied, I turned them off for the night, knowing that in the morning, the real show would begin. The stage was set. The trap was ready. And as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow morning, Karen was in for a surprise she would never forget. The next morning, I woke up early, brewed myself a cup of coffee, and positioned myself by the window where I had a perfect view of the battlefield. My motion-activated sprinklers were armed and ready, and I had double-checked their aim the night before. Now, all I had to do was wait. Sure enough, at exactly 7:15 a.m., Karen strutted out of her house with her fluffy white poodle, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. As usual, she was glued to her phone, barely paying attention as her dog trotted right onto my lawn like it owned the place. I grinned, took a sip of my coffee, and watched the magic unfold. The second the dog crossed the sprinkler's sensor, a high-pressure blast of ice-cold water shot up from the ground with pinpoint accuracy. The poodle let out a high-pitched yelp and bolted, yanking its leash so hard that Karen, caught completely off guard, stumbled forward with a shriek. But it didn't stop there. Karen, now thoroughly confused, took a step further onto my grass, and the second sprinkler activated. Another powerful jet of water nailed her right in the stomach, soaking her designer leggings and overpriced hoodie in an instant. She let out a loud, dramatic scream, flailing her arms as she tried to escape, only to trigger a third sprinkler, which sent a direct blast to the side of her head, drenching her completely. At this point, her dog was in full panic mode, yanking on its leash and trying to escape the unrelenting surprise attack. Karen, struggling to regain control, slipped on the wet grass and landed flat on her back, right in the same spot her dog usually did its business. I nearly spit out my coffee from laughing so hard. For the first time ever, Karen was now rolling around in the exact spot she had so casually allowed her dog to defile for months. Karma had arrived, and it was in the form of high-pressure sprinklers. Drenched, humiliated, and fuming, Karen scrambled to her feet, grabbed her equally soaked dog, and ran off my lawn, coughing and sputtering as she stomped back toward her house. She didn't even glance back at my yard, she was too busy trying to preserve whatever shreds of dignity she had left. As she disappeared into her house, I leaned back in my chair, feeling triumphant. I had waited weeks for this moment, and it was worth every second. But I knew Karen. She wasn't the type to take embarrassment well. And sure enough, within the hour, she was at my front door, furious, pounding on it like a debt collector. The battle wasn't over yet, but I was ready for round two. Karen was livid. Less than an hour after she had been publicly humiliated by my surprise sprinkler system, she was pounding on my front door, dripping wet, her dog shivering in her arms. I took my time answering, making sure to compose my most innocent expression before I opened the door. The second I did, Karen exploded. "What the hell was that?" she screeched, pushing her soaked hair out of her face. This is harassment. You attacked me and my dog." I raised an eyebrow, pretending to be confused. "Attacked you?" "Karen, I think you walked into my yard and set off my sprinklers. That's kind of on you, isn't it?" Her eyes flared with rage, but I wasn't done yet. "I mean, it's not like I forced you to stand in the exact spot your dog usually poops on," I added, folding my arms. "Didn't you say just the other day that it was just a little nature and that it would break down on its own? Guess that's not so fun when you're the one rolling around in it." Karen's jaw clenched so tight I thought she might crack a tooth. "You did this on purpose," she hissed. "You set this up to humiliate me." I shrugged. "Karen, they're just sprinklers. You know, for watering my lawn. Which, by the way, you've been letting your dog ruin for weeks." I stepped out onto the porch and pointed toward the very visible motion sensors along the edge of the grass. "These are completely legal, and they're there to deter animals from damaging my property. If you had just kept your dog off my lawn, you wouldn't have even noticed them." Her face turned bright red, but I wasn't finished. "And just so we're clear, I've got security footage of every single time you let your dog poop on my yard. Would you like me to send that to the HOA? I'm sure they'd love to see how well you've been maintaining community standards." Karen froze. For the first time, I saw a flash of panic in her eyes. She knew she had been caught. I let the silence stretch between us, waiting to see if she would double down or if she would finally realize that she had lost. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to scream something else, but instead, she just let out a sharp exhale. "You're unbelievable," she spat. Then she turned on her heel, stomped back to her house, and slammed her front door so hard it rattled the windows. I stood there for a moment, savoring the victory. But I knew Karen. She wasn't the type to just let this go. I had won the battle, but I needed to make sure I won the war. After our heated confrontation, I knew Karen wasn't just going to drop it. She wasn't the type to admit defeat. Instead of taking responsibility for her actions, she would try to find a way to turn the tables on me. And sure enough, 2 days later, I received an official-looking letter from the HOA. I opened it and immediately laughed. Homeowner violation notice, unauthorized water hazard. Apparently, Karen had filed a formal complaint against me, claiming that my motion-activated sprinklers were a safety hazard and intentionally designed to cause distress to residents. She even went as far as to claim that I had weaponized my irrigation system to create a hostile environment. I was almost impressed by the ridiculousness of it. The HOA's letter demanded that I disable my sprinklers immediately or face escalating fines. Karen must have thought she had me cornered, but what she didn't know was that I had already prepared for this. I sent the HOA a detailed response with the following. 1. Proof that my sprinklers were legal. I had county regulations that clearly stated motion-activated sprinklers were approved for pest and animal deterrence as long as they didn't encroach on public property. 2. A copy of my security footage, showing Karen repeatedly letting her dog use my lawn as a toilet, ignoring all my polite warnings. 3. Screenshots of the HOA's own guidelines, which required pet owners to pick up after their animals and prevent damage to other homeowners' yards. 4. A formal complaint against Karen, requesting that she be fined for multiple violations of the HOA's pet policies. I sent my response directly to the HOA board members, CCing Karen, and half the neighborhood just for good measure. 2 days later, I got another letter from the HOA, but this time, it wasn't a violation notice. It was an apology. The HOA ruled in my favor, stating that my sprinklers were fully compliant and that Karen was actually in violation of the neighborhood's pet rules. As a result, Karen was issued a formal warning and was ordered to pay a fine for every documented instance of failing to clean up after her dog. But the best part? The HOA told me I was free to keep my sprinklers exactly where they were. Karen had not only failed to get rid of them, but she had also gotten herself fined in the process. For the next week, I watched from my porch as she begrudgingly steered her dog away from my property, dragging it to the other side of the street while shooting daggers at me every time she passed. It was glorious. And just to rub a little extra salt in the wound, I installed a second set of sprinklers in my backyard, just in case she ever got any ideas. Karen never let her dog near my lawn again. I had one. Completely.